Did you ever think what it would be like traveling along in an open car without a windshield? Boy, you wouldn't go very far before you got all splattered with mud. And you'd have to keep your eyes closed so as not to be blinded by the dust. Well, when you're traveling along in life, Rangers, common sense acts as a pretty important windshield. It lets you see where you're going.
I am the greatest.
Welcome, everyone. Hope everybody is having a wonderful Sunday today. Just make sure everything is working on my end. Welcome, everyone. Hope everybody is having. All right, everything is working. So let's go through a little housekeeping and then we will get started. All right. Once again, if you are on Amazon, please hit that affiliate link. It should be in the description of this video. To support this channel at Mass Media Group, we greatly appreciate that. You can also go to our store. You can get our merch at etmmediagroupstore.com. That's etmmediagroupstore.com. And as always, please check out Reparations Now, the documentary. That's at reparationsnowdoc.com, or you can check us out on Tubi as well. All right, if you've been missing what's kind of going on right now out in the election world, we did have a chance to speak with Judge Claudia Barber out there in Maryland. So there is that interview as well on our channel if you have time to check that out. But here's some results. Judge Barber actually came in a close fourth. It was real close. Looks like a Christine Marie Celeste actually won that election unofficially so far at 31%. Looks like Thomas F. Casey came in at 25%. Gina A. Jackson Stevenson came in at 21.24%, and Judge Barber came in at 21.11%. So she put up a valiant effort. So just want to give a shout out to Claudia Barber and her effort out there in Maryland. All right. We also have New York updates. If you haven't seen that, please check that out as well. We did stream live here the first public hearing out in New York, so you can check that one too. And hopefully we're going to have Brother Divine out there from the U.S. Freedmen's Project to give us a heads up on the next hearing, which is December 16th out in Queens. So we're going to try to be following that as well, family. All right. We covered the U.S. Census Race and Ethnicity Coding Improvement Project, so you can check that one out here, as well as post-election results from and critique about the 2024 election with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. All right. And we went over some ballot measures out here in California too, as well. So you can check that out. And some of the CLBC potential members, I believe we did a show on that as well. But when we do get the quote unquote official results, we'll be following up to that as well. All right. And in the future, don't know when, between now and when the inauguration happens with Donald Trump, we're actually going to be going over what lies ahead with the new administration. But yeah, so today we are going to be talking about the history and reparations of Section 14. We're going to be reading from the city of Palm Springs. They actually have a fact sheet. It's about 6 pages. So honestly, fam, please sit back, get your libation. I don't know how long this is going to take. It may take the full hour. It may not take the full hour, depending on how fast I read. You know, this is an AI. This is an AI. I'm not a robot. I'm actually a real person. So thank you for your patience in this matter. Hopefully we can learn from this process, because that's what we're here to do, is to educate ourselves. All right, we actually did record some of the housing reparations, Palm Springs, Section 14, the council city member meeting that happened, I think it was sometime last week, I want to say. But let's actually play a clip because I know they are distributing $5.91 million to some of the descendants and survivors. But let's actually play a clip for those who have yet to see it. This is about a 4 to 5 minute clip. Here we go.
So with regard to the first aspect of the settlement agreement, the financial settlement, it is valued at $5.91 million. The distribution method would be through a direct payment to the claimant's attorney trust account, which is how most lawsuits are settled, which is with a payment to the trust account, sometimes to the trust account and the client, a joint check. And these trust accounts are accounts that lawyers and law firms are frequently hold, and they are regulated by the state bar. So there is oversight, and the money cannot just be spent, at the whim of the attorney. There are strict regulations with regard to how those funds are to be spent. So the payment will be made to the claimant's attorney's trust account, who will then oversee the disbursement to verified former Section 14 residents and their descendants. The claimant's class is to provide 4 weeks worth of an opportunity for qualified persons to join a class of claimants. And there was a comment earlier today from a member of the public with regard to the fact that there is no class action lawsuit. That's true. Ms. Martin has not filed a class action lawsuit. There's been no class action lawsuit filed. However, the settlement agreement as proposed tonight and it has been presented to Ms. Martin is structured very similar to a class action. So with regard to the first aspect of the settlement agreement, the financial settlement, it is valued at $5.91 million. The distribution method would be through a direct payment to the claimant's attorney trust account, which is how most lawsuits are settled, which is with a payment to the trust account, sometimes to the trust account and the client, a joint check. And these trust accounts are accounts that lawyers and law firms are frequently hold, and they are regulated by the state bar. So there is oversight, and the money cannot just be spent, at the whim of the attorney. There are strict regulations with regard to how those funds are to be spent. So the payment will be made to the claimant's attorney's trust account, who will then oversee the disbursement to verified former Section 14 residents and their descendants. The claimant's class is to provide 4 weeks worth of an opportunity for qualified persons to join a class of claimants. And there was a comment earlier today from a member of the public with regard to the fact that there is no class action lawsuit. That's true. Ms. Martin has not filed a class action lawsuit. There's been no class action lawsuit filed. However, the settlement agreement as proposed tonight and it has been presented to Ms. Martin is structured very similar to a class action lawsuit. And that's what this portion really deals with, which is providing an opportunity for other qualified persons to join the class of claimants, and the claimants will agree to the city's anti-discrimination clause. This will provide for protection against the city, against future liability, as well as the fourth bullet point here. The basis of the amount that was arrived at by the City Council is based on an estimated current value of $30,000 per home, with a total of 197 non-abandoned residences, which is the best available information that we have from the historical context study. The settlement agreement as proposed would contain standard settlement provisions, including no admission of wrongdoing or liability by either party, as well as the requirement that release and waivers be obtained from at least the 1,200 existing claimants, as well as any others who join in pursuant to that second bullet point here. And again, so that would go to the comment from the member of the public with regard to potential future liability. This would protect against individuals coming forward in a year or two and making similar allegations or claims against the city. And so with regard to the settlement agreement, the city staff and the city attorney's office would direct the city attorney to prepare a settlement agreement in form and substance as approved by the city attorney and city manager, and direct the city manager to execute all documents necessary to carry out this settlement. With regard to the number of homes, as I mentioned earlier, the April 2024 estimate was 145 homes. That was based on the abatement records that the city had at the time. As I also indicated, based on the historical context study and multiple data points within that study, the city estimates the number is closer to 197. It should be recognized that obviously the events that are the subject of this settlement occurred 60, 70 years ago. So there may be some who will say that there were higher numbers. There may be some that say there are lower numbers. But this is really the best estimate that we have based on the historical context study, which the city commissioned.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. So you heard from the Palm Springs City. Let me go ahead and put some music on and check, make sure that we are good to go on my end. All right, we are good to go. All right, so I don't know, maybe somebody could put in the chat. I'm not that good at math. I've never been a mathematician, but if we're looking at around $5 million, and so far 1,200 claimants, that's about what, 4,000, 5,000-ish dollars around there. Man, where's Darlene when you need her? Shout out to Darlene and Kim. Miss y'all, but they're taking a hiatus right now. But I did want to do this story today because I think it's important that, you know, we look at what this is if they're claiming that, you know, just like Evanston, if they're claiming that we should take precedence in this reparations, you know, future reparations, not only here in California, but in New York. I mean, should we even take a look at this? And I think definitely we should, because wherever reparations they're claiming it to be, we need to do a full deep dive into it. All right, so let's start with this City of Palm Springs fact sheet. All right. Okay, it looks like this was distributed on May 7th, 2024, City of Palm Springs fact sheet. This is the history of Section 14. All right, and then after this fact sheet from the City of Palm Springs, I'm going to read an article and then go into some numbers regarding the Agua Caliente tribe. Question: where is Section 14? The Palm Spring area has been home to the Agua Caliente band of Cahuilla Indians, with archaeological evidence indicating that the tribe's ancestors inhabited Taquitz Canyon for at least 5,000 years and the Agua Caliente hot mineral springs for more than 8,000 years. Section 14 lies adjacent to the Palm Springs downtown area. Section 14 is bordered by the Alejo Road on the north, Sunrise Way on the east, Ramon Road on the south, and Indian Canyon on the west. The Agua Caliente hot mineral springs is located near the intersection of Taquitz Canyon Way and Indian Canyon, the site of the new Agua Caliente Cultural Plaza. On May 15, 1876, President Ulysses S. Grant designated Section 14 and a portion of Section 22 as an Agua Caliente Indian Reservation. Subsequently, in 1877, President Rutherford B. Hayes expanded the reservation to encompass the even-numbered sections in 3 townships totaling over 30,000 acres, all of which were under tribal ownership. Okay, just remember that. The tribal ownership, right? Put a pin in that. Question: when did the Agua Caliente band of Cahuilla Indians begin developing their land? What is the history of these efforts? Answer: 1910. First stipulated in 1910, the federal Indian policy restricted lease term limits to 5 years for Native American land designation for residential and community use. 1950s, the federal Indian policy restrictions largely transformed Native American leaseholds into temporary accommodations, attracting individuals or families renting on a short-term basis without plans for permanent residency. This situation resulted in limited investments and insufficient monthly or yearly income generation, leading to properties with minimal economic value. Okay, so 1950s, that's very important as well. All right. 1954, the Agua Caliente's inaugural all-women tribal council was elected and played an important role in shaping the tribe's governance. They drafted the tribe's first constitution and bylaws, worked with Congress to secure more favorable leasing terms for tribal land, and facilitated the development of the first large-scale project on Section 14. All right, let's see if we can get a picture of, let's see them, Agua Caliente Tribal Council women. All right, let's see here. All right, first council. And if we can, I'm just gonna keep reading. I know I got a picture of women tribal. Let's see if I have it here. Okay, we got it. All right, let me see if we can share this one instead. Okay. So here are the sometimes. All right. So here are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 women who created the first tribal council in 1955. All right. So those are the women. All right. And we'll later get into them as well, because they decided to work with real estate developers for some reason, and didn't, at the time want to develop, I guess, their own, whatever, but they decided to actually go outside of their tribal territory to select other architects and developers, but we will get into that later. All right, let's go back to it. See where we're at. Okay, here we go. All right, so in 1954, the Agua Caliente's inaugural all-women tribal council was elected and played an important role in shaping the tribe's governance. They drafted the tribe's first constitution and bylaws, worked with Congress to secure more favorable leasing terms for tribal land, and facilitated the development of the first large-scale project on Section 14. As detailed by Tribal Chair Ortner, the substandard living conditions in Section 14 were due to many factors. One of the most important was the federal government barring Native American landowners from entering long-term leases. Overcoming this obstacle to land development topped the tribe's agenda. In 1955, President Dwight Eisenhower signed the Indian Long-Term Lease Act of 1955 into law, extending lease terms on reservation lands from 5 years to 25 years with a one-time renewal option of 25 years. All right, so let me share this information. Okay. So here is the act of, in 1995, the Long-Term Leasing Act. All right, and let's see. As you can see, there's many tribes here that are mentioned, and I'm not going to go and read all of them, but let me see if I can highlight the Agua Caliente. Okay, so here's Agua Caliente. I'll just read this sentence here. It says, all leases so granted shall be for a term of not to exceed 25 years, except leases of land located outside the boundaries of Indian reservations in the state of New Mexico, leases of land on the Agua Caliente Palm Spring Reservation, the Dania Reservation, the Pueblo of Santa Ana, with exception of lands known as Santa Pueblo Spanish Grant. Anyway, so here is the act. I just wanted to quickly show you that the Agua Caliente tribe was mentioned regarding the lease reservations. All right. So let's continue. 1956, the tribal council sought the expertise of architect Victor Gruen to devise a comprehensive master plan for Section 14. All right, so let's see if we can show a quick picture of Victor Gruen. Okay, so this is Victor Gruen. Victor David Gruen, born Victor David Groenbaum on July 18th, 1903 to February 14th, 1980, was an Austrian-American architect best known as a pioneer in the design of shopping malls in the United States. Aha. He is also noted for his urban revitalization proposals described in his writings and applied in master plans such as for Fort Worth, Texas in 1955, Kalamazoo, Michigan, 1958, and Fresno, California, 1965. An advocate of prioritizing pedestrians over cars in urban cores. He was also the designer of the first outdoor pedestrian mall in the United States, the Kalamazoo Mall. All right, so that's a little information on him. All right. Okay. Let's see, here we go. In 1958, the tribe negotiated a 50-year lease for 8 acres of land on Section 14 to Palm Springs Spa Incorporated, led by developer Samuel Bonawit, with a minimum annual rent of $36,000. This landmark agreement, marking the nation's first long-term lease of tribal lands, laid the groundwork for the development of a $1.7 million health center and resort, culminating in the opening of Palm Springs Spa in 1960. In 1959, legislation allowing for 99-year leases was finally approved and signed into law by President Eisenhower. Development began in earnest on Section 14, including the construction of the Spa and Dunes hotels, Plaza Motors, Wellness Springs Apartments and Viejo Alajo Apartments. Question: how did the city become involved in Section 14? Starting around 1932, the state of California and Riverside County became involved with Section 14 due to health and safety concerns. A detailed inspection report in June 1933 highlighted substandard living conditions. In 1948, Dr. Robert E. Westfall, the county health officer, advocated for immediate cleanup efforts after more than a decade of attempting to address health and sanitation issues in Section 14. Dr. Westfall estimated approximately 1,500 individuals were living in buildings on the Agua Caliente Reservation, suggesting many of these structures might require condemnation. Condemnation is a formal declaration by government authorities deeming a property to be unsafe or uninhabitable. In April 1951, the city of Palm Springs, which was incorporated in 1938, was instructed by the California Housing Authority and Riverside County Department of Health that the makeshift homes in Section 14 were substandard and should be removed. Eviction notices began going out to these residents at the time. Planning for alternative housing for those facing displacement began promptly. The city manager was tasked by the city council with organizing meetings to address and resolve this housing issue. At a December 19, 1951 city council meeting, the city council, via resolution, directed the city manager to work closely with state and county health authorities to secure the deferment of all evictions on Indian land, Section 14, until May 1st, 1952. The resolution stated that eviction from these buildings would be equivalent to exclusion from the city as there was no low-rent housing available. On June 5th, 1952, an article in the Desert Sun reported the state had given tacit approval for an extension of the time frame for demolishing the condemned buildings. As the challenge of finding and developing housing persisted, the city council acted on June 30th, 1953. They passed a resolution that deferred evictions until January 1st, 1954. In the meantime, the resolution also mandated that the building inspector notify occupants of substandard dwellings to bring them up to building code standards within 6 months. All right, so I'll repeat that again. It says the resolution also mandated that the building inspector notify occupants of substandard dwellings to bring them up to building code standards within 6 months. I mean, interjection. I mean, are you serious? So you wanted to tell these people to bring their homes up to building codes in 6 months, family. Knowing good and well these people don't have no money. Anyway, let's continue. Additionally, all trailers were required to be relocated to designated trailer parks or other specified areas within the same time frame. On September 18, 1953, the council passed another resolution deferring evictions until June 1st, 1954. Soon after, abatement hearings began and continued well into the latter part of 1955. Under the law, residents or owners of the homes had to either bring their buildings up to state health and safety standards or raise the buildings. What did the eviction process in Section 14 look like? On December 5th, 1956, the Palm Springs Fire Department supervised the first clearing of buildings. 10 buildings, formerly part of the Mineral Trailer Park, were burned down as the first step in clearing Section 14 of substandard housing. This clearance facilitated negotiations by the Agua Caliente Tribal Council. Okay, I'm gonna repeat it. This clearance was facilitated negotiations by the Agua Caliente Tribal Council. Okay, so they're on the hook for at least to rebuild and develop 8 acres, including the mineral baths situated at the intersection of Indian Avenue and Talkwitz Drive, now Indian Canyon and Talkwitz Canyon Way. In July 1962, deputy sheriffs served eviction notice to some, quote, squatter, end quote, residents of Section 14. These notices were served after 2 prior notices of 90 and 30 days, 4 months total, had failed to clear the land. These individuals living in structures whose land leases had expired long ago were not paying land rent while renting structures to other parties. From September 29th, 1965 to December 3rd, 1967, further abatements occurred on Section 14. There were a few more in 1968 and 1969. This information is available in collection of documents uploaded to the city's website in 2023. What was the notification process to vacate the residences? 30-day notifications were given to occupants by tribal allottees, conservators, and guardians. Affidavits of notices were provided, and more time was given to occupants if requested. In extreme cases where occupants refused to vacate, an unlawful detainer process was initiated. I'm going to repeat that. In extreme cases where occupants refused to vacate, an unlawful detainer process was initiated. A 1967 memo from the city attorney's office to the Bureau of Indian Affairs local office outlines the legal steps the city would take before demolition started. The process included an administrative hearing procedure recommended by the city's Human Relations Commission, personal contact of owner of Indian land or his conservator or guardian asking permission and cooperation for the abatement and cleanup of parcel of land. A, if the owner agrees to have the city of Palm Springs abate its property, the owner will then proceed in a legal manner to have the tenant or tenants vacate from his property. B, when the tenant has moved or vacated from his property, the owner will then give the city of Palm Springs a proper written permit to demolish, burn, and remove any structure or debris that remains. C, should the tenant feel that by being required to move from the premises he is being mistreated, he can appear and receive counsel before the Board of Appeals and or the Administrative Hearing Committee of the Human Relations Commission. Question. According to archival documents, what was the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA, involvement in Section 14? Answer. Paul Hand, a representative from the U.S. Department of the Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA, worked with the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians, tribal allottees, conservators, and guardians in the city of Palm Springs to abate abandoned structures and residencies deemed public nuisances due to building, housing, and fire code violations. The BIA representative worked with the landowners to ensure proper legal notice was given to those living in these buildings to vacate. In some cases, these residences were asked to leave 2 or 3 years earlier and had not complied. In both a November 1965 letter to Fire Marshal James Harris and a memo addressed to tribal owners, allottees, and guardians, Hand wrote, quote, to the best of our knowledge, there are no buildings in the area worth saving. I'm gonna let y'all ponder on that a little bit. To the best of our knowledge, there are no buildings in the area worth saving. November 1st, 1965, a notice written by hand was hand-delivered to allottees, conservators, and guardians regarding public nuisance abatement of Section 14. The notice letter stated that all occupants were technically trespassing, expressing the hope that owners would take action to relocate them. It proposed granting occupants 30 days from receipt of written notice to vacate, with flexibility for landlords to serve notices on the next rental due date. The city was willing to proceed with partial vacancy if owners opted not to require removal of certain occupants immediately. Additionally, the letter instructed landlords to indicate in the permit the date on which occupants were notified to vacate. Landlords were also advised to specify exceptions for occupants they did not require to vacate, providing their names and the locations of their residencies in the permit. All right. Question. Who requested the Section 14 residents to vacate the properties? The tribal members, conservators, or the guardians provided the 30-day notifications to vacate their tenants. In some cases, those who did not comply were given additional time to move out. The tribal members, conservators, or guardians signed the burn permits to allow for the demolishing and burning of these substandard structures on their land. All right, let's see what time is it. Okay, we're at 35 here. Some members did not actually have control over the land as their estates were overseen by guardians and conservators. The conservatorship program in Palm Springs, which was dismantled in 1968, barred the tribe or members from managing their own estates and redirected the wealth to their assigned, often white guardians and conservators. I'm going to repeat that again. The conservatorship program in Palm Springs, which was dismantled in 1968, barred the tribe or members from managing their own estates and redirected the wealth to their assigned, often white guardians and conservators. 48 signed burn permits found in public records contain signatures from the following: 10 private buyers, 10 conservators, 9 guardians, 6 allottees, 5 attorneys representing allottees, 4 tribal heirs of allottees, 3 allottees as conservators or guardians for a tribal member, and 1 representative for an heir of an allottee. What was the role of the city and the city's fire department? Great question. Fire marshal. The fire marshal ensured the city received the proper approval from the landowner to abate the structures and provided affidavits declaring the premises that were to be abated were, quote, vacant and free of personal possessions and anything of value, unquote. The fire marshal also notified the BIA representative of the scheduled abatement date and requested that they contact the occupants once more to inform them when the abatement would begin. The fire marshal provided schedules for the planned burning and issued press releases to the local media informing them of the start of the abatement. The fire marshal oversaw the controlled burns during the abatement process and took before, during, or after photos following the demolition and burning of the structures. All right. Let's make sure we're good on the audio here. Cleanup coordinator. The cleanup coordinator was hired by the city early in the abatement process to provide oversight of the project. Among the cleanup coordinator's duties was communicating with the BIA representative and the allottees, conservators, and guardians, and providing updates to the city. What is the city's position on the findings of the 1968 California Attorney General's report? The California Attorney General's office was requested on July 22, 1966 by the Fair Employment Practices Commission to enact Ernest Moore from the Office of Economic Opportunity in Palm Springs concerning the displacement of residents from Section 14. Deputy Attorney General Loren Miller Jr. went to Palm Springs to gather material for his report, which was published in 1968. No further action from the Attorney General of the state of California was taken. Let's repeat that. No further action from the Attorney General of the state of California was taken. Okay, so it did look like the Attorney General at that time was notified. Okay, so definitely the state of California was involved in this as well. All right. Some of the factual and legal conclusions in the report are contradicted by the findings of a trial court decision that was handed down 2 months after the report. Joe and Virginia Leonard versus City of Palm Springs, believe that's Riverside County, court case number Indio 10878, July 5th, 1968. That court concluded that the city did not violate the law when demolishing a residence with the permission of the tribal member owner. City manager Frank Alshire reported that Miller only visited for one day. As such, it is likely that the discrepancies between public records and the 1968 California Attorney General's report are the result of a relatively short visit. As the Desert Sun's managing editor Al Tostado noted, the report does not mention that in April 1951, the city of Palm Springs was instructed by the California Housing Authority and the County Department of Health to abate the dwelling units in Section 14 due to health concerns. Public records, as explored on pages 2-3 of this fact sheet, also indicate that the city did attempt to defer the displacements of Section 14. This was not explored in the 1968 Attorney General's report. I'm going to repeat that again. This was not explored in the 1968 Attorney General's report. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so that is the end of that city fact sheet. We're going to continue and read. Okay, well, actually, I'm going to go back to this. This is the Agua Caliente Band of Indians website, but we're going to actually go back to that. Let me see. I'm going to pull up a article that was written by the Desert Sun. So if you can please give me a sec, I greatly appreciate it, and I will pull that up so we can start reading that. Okay, there's a lot of ads on this one, so all right. So please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications if you haven't already. I greatly appreciate it. All right, so let's go ahead and read this article by the Desert Sun titled, "It Was Beautiful for the White People. 1960 Still Casts a Shadow of Distress Over Palm Springs." This was written by Denise Goolsbee and Rosalie Murphy, dated August 24th, 2022. Those are the updated dates, but it looks like it was originally published in September 22nd of 2016. All right. The most valuable square of the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians checkered board-shaped reservation is Section 14, a 1-mile stretch of desert just east of downtown Palm Springs. It's home to the tribe's namesake hot springs, which is central to the tribe's traditional life and attracted the desert's first wellness resorts in the 1880s. Today, the land holds a sprawling casino, hotels, condos, and the Palm Springs Convention Center. All right, so we're actually going to go in later on and find out some of the alleged revenue of one of those casinos. But for 2 decades, in the middle of the 20th century, Section 14 is where Palm Springs' simmering racial tensions boiled over. Archaic land leasing laws kept the Agua Caliente from developing their land until the late 1950s. Discriminatory housing practices kept African American and Latino families from living in better developed parts of the city. So the tribe's landowners rented Section 14 land to families of color, generating some revenue and giving the city's blue-collar workforce a place to live. This was, quote, the other Palm Springs, as an Agua Caliente Cultural Museum exhibit dubbed it last year, where the resort town's low-income workforce lived apart from the rest of the city, at least until the city's leaders sought to develop the land. Over the course of a decade, families were asked to leave, then ordered to leave, and ultimately their houses destroyed with nowhere else to go. They scattered to outlying parts of the city. Quote, We were in the heart of the civil rights movement and at the very height of civil rights in America. Palm Springs was burning people of color's homes, end quote. McPeter said, it's definitely a part of Palm Springs history and legacy that's a real dark spot, a dark time, but one that needs to be remembered so we don't allow ourselves to ever repeat the horrors of our past. All right, so we'll continue down a little further. By the 1930s, Palm Springs was garnering a reputation as a resort destination, attracting a steady stream of Hollywood stars and movie moguls. Prominent industrialists, executives, and socialites began to join them, spending winters at the Desert Inn and El Mirador Hotel. As tourist traffic increased, so did demand for labor. Workers continued to pour into Palm Springs, but de facto segregation was prevalent throughout the city. According to a 1967 Department of Justice report, landlords in most of the city wouldn't rent to people of color, and even if they would, homes were too expensive for working class families. So they congregated on Section 14, renting land from members of the Agua Caliente. Bennie Mae Crawford piled into a car with 5 of her family members in November of 1942 when they left Carthage, Texas. After 2 days and 2 nights of driving, they arrived in Palm Springs. Her husband had taken a construction job, building barracks at Torney General Hospital during World War II. 2 weeks later, she got a job in the hospital's kitchen. According to a 1937 survey of the western half of Section 14, conditions had already been poor for decades. There were about 1,000 buildings laid out in a haphazard and crazy quilt manner. Everything seems to be out of line. There are buildings where there should be streets, fences, roads, and buildings are crooked. But Crawford, who was African American, settled there anyway, near present-day Calle El Segundo and Arenas Road. Quote, they let you build a house or build whatever you could on their land, and they would charge you very little rent, end quote, Crawford said during a 1987 Prickly Pear interview. Quote, we only paid $600 for the house at the time. It was livable, end quote. She said, though they used outhouses and cooked with butane gas, which would occasionally cut out in the middle of cooking. I'm going to repeat that again. She said, though, that they used outhouses and cooked with butane gas, which would occasionally cut out in the middle of cooking. Black people were a small minority in Palm Springs Inn, Crawford said. When you'd see a black person at that particular time, you were glad to see one. Very few, she recounted. In the post-war years, Palm Springs was implicitly segregated, said Reverend Carl McPeters, who lived on Section 14 until he was about 7 years old. Black and Latino Americans had to sit in the balcony at the Plaza Theater. People of color only lived in select neighborhoods on Section 14 and on a tract owned by black businessman Lawrence Crossley. McPeter's parents had worked picking cotton in Texas and left in the early 1950s in pursuit of a better life. His father became an auto mechanic and his mother opened a dry cleaning business. On Section 14, they lived in a wooden shack without a concrete foundation, not unlike the one they had in Texas. Quote, the Hollywood elite and stars lived in Palm Springs, and here we are, a group of people living in squalor, feeling oppressed and depressed. McPeter said during a September interview at his parents' home in northern Palm Springs, quote, it was like, wow, this is the land of milk and honey, but we don't get neither one. Cora Crawford and her husband also moved to Palm Springs from East Texas. She worked as a nanny, her husband as a gardener and carpenter, and they raised five kids on Section 15. When I got to California, I thought everything was beautiful, said Cora 83 during a recent interview at her home in northern Palm Springs. It was beautiful for the white people. I'm going to repeat that again. When I got to California, I thought everything was beautiful, said Cora 83 during a recent interview at her home in northern Palm Springs. Quote, it was beautiful for the white people. All right. In the late 1930s, the northwestern corner of Section 14 had been opened specifically to white people who wanted to build homes. According to a 1937 Department of the Interior survey, that's where the Biss family ended up when they moved from Banning to Palm Springs in 1953. The white family moved into a 2-story plaster home on a dirt road, renting the land and underneath from a member of the tribe. Sisters Vicky McDermott and Vera Macias recently visited the site of their childhood home, where the family paid $10 per month to lease the land. A condo complex was built there in 1966. Each family now pays $219 per month for the land lease, according to the real estate listings. All right, so I think I'm going to stop there. Let's see, should we continue? Okay, actually, I'm going to continue down a little farther. Okay, by the time Cora Crawford arrived on Section 14 in 1951, living conditions had worsened. The reservation had no trash service, and local hotels would dump their waste on Section 14. Let's think about this, okay? The reservation had no trash service, and local hotels would dump their waste on Section 14. Residents complained of an inadequate water supply. In 1956, an 8-year-old boy was playing with matches and was trapped in an abandoned car. He died of his burns. The Desert Sun's publisher wrote in an editorial in 1956, "The mess is indescribable. Slums. This is even worse." Around the same time, the Riverside Press Enterprise wrote, quote, "Homes are death traps of tender dry wood where families crowd in one another in unsanitary profusion. Garbage and trash litter backyards and vacant lots. Beer cans are strewn along roadways. It is a breeding place for crime and vice. In any community, it would be a disgrace." But Section 14 was getting valuable. Palm Springs was booming, and the thought of a slum, quote unquote, so near to downtown unnerved the city's leaders. The city and tribe, I repeat that, the city and tribe agreed to undertake a cleanup effort. But that proved harder than it looked. In 1953, substandard dwellings were ordered demolished unless they could be brought up to state health and sanitation standards. The deadline was repeatedly pushed back and standards lowered. In 1954, the city removed 17 trailers and piles of trash. The next year, it targeted abandoned cars. In 1956, the city fire department burned 10 condemned trailers. A firefighter threw a match onto the site and it began to burn, flames leaping into the sky as spectators gathered to watch the early morning blaze, according to a Desert Sun report from that day. It took just 7 minutes for the homes to be demolished. Today, the decade of evictions at Section 14 is seen as a stain on Palm Springs' glorious history. Thousands of working-class residents, most of them Black or Latino, were pushed out of their homes. The Native Americans who had leased that land to those residents were left without income. The California Attorney General's office, which investigated the convictions in 1968, closed its report by saying the city of Palm Springs not only disregarded the residents of Section 14 as property owners, taxpayers, and voters. Palm Springs ignored that the residents of Section 14 were human beings. Families began leaving Section 14 during the cleanups of the 1950s. The district's population fell from about 5,000 people in 1948 to just 1,700 in 1961, according to the state's 1968 report on evictions. Cora Crawford said her family got its first order to leave around 1955. For 2 or 3 years, the Crawfords stayed in their Section 14 home while their neighbors moved away. I cried. I wasn't there when they started moving them off. I couldn't take it, Crawford said. Then around 1958, authorities knocked on her door. Quote, they came, knocked on our door. I was scared to death, Crawford said. You're going to have to leave. We're going to burn the house. Burn it, burn the houses down. I couldn't sleep at night. The majority of tenants told the state attorney general they hadn't received 30-day eviction notices or that their homes were demolished before the 30-day notice period was up. The city didn't keep records. The city didn't keep records of who was displaced or what was destroyed. What? And some residents said their homes were burned with their belongings inside. While the attorney general concluded there wasn't evidence to charge the city with a crime, the 1968 report said, quote, the incident displayed a unique insensitivity on the part of the city of Palm Springs to the problem of adequate minority housing, in particular, and to minority community relations in general. City leaders maintained that they hadn't actually evicted anyone. That was the job of Agua Caliente landowners. But most of those landowners didn't actually have control over their land. Their estates were overseen by guardians and conservators, local business people who were supposed to teach the Agua Caliente how to manage estates. Many were local judges and attorneys who were close to city leaders. Some officials, included former Mayor Frank Bogart, were conservators themselves. The attorney general found, quote, evidence of unusual cooperation between developers, the Indian conservators, and the city of Palm Springs in the demolition of Section 14. After they left Section 14, Cora Crawford's family stayed in a building owned by Crossley military barracks that had been burned into an apartment complex. That had been turned into an apartment complex. They secured a mortgage from a lender in Banning, about 30 miles away. In 1960, they bought a lot in northern Palm Springs where they built the house Crawford lives in today. Banning Mae Crawford said she was one of the last to leave Section 14 in the mid-1960s. Like Cora, she moved to the northern edge of Palm Springs where, quote, it was so windy you almost had to tie yourself down, end quote. Her neighbors moved to Banning, San Bernardino, Riverside, or Garnett. Anywhere they could purchase homes instead of renting, she said. McPeters keeps a copy of the U.S. Department of Justice's 1967 report on Section 14 on the wall of his office at Curry Coast Christian Center in Indio, the church he pastors. He was about 7 years old when his family was sent away from Section 14, and as his parents' generation shrinks, he strives to teach young people about what happened and reminded them that families like his were not only victims, but victors, he said. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So this article. All right. So let's continue. I'm going to skip down a little bit. Today, Section 14 is almost totally developed. The trailer parks of a half century ago have given away to condo developments, hotels, Palm Springs Convention Center, and the Spa Resort Casino. Prominent statues on this central thoroughfare, Tahquitz Canyon Way, remind visitors that the land belongs to the Agua Caliente. All right. Let's see. We're about an hour in. So let me go ahead and I am going to close this out. Thank you for joining. I appreciate everyone for listening, staying aware and educated. I'm trying to find, let's see here. Okay. I'm going to share. Okay, is this it? Yeah, here it goes. I'm going to share this real quick. Okay, it might be hard to see on the screen here. I don't know if I can highlight it or not. Okay, so according to Zoom Info, it says, I believe this is a spa resort casino. Now, I'm going to share another screen. So I don't know if this is the same resort, but it might be. But according to Zoom Info, it says its revenue is currently 28.9 million. Now this one doesn't indicate the date of it. So is this 2021 maybe? All right, so this looks like as of 2021, but I'm gonna go to another source here as well. Let's see here. All right, I'm gonna share this one. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so there's another okay, so this looks like another casino by Agua Caliente. All right, so it says this is the Agua Caliente Casino. Palm Springs revenue is $73.0 million. All right, what is Agua Caliente's Casino Palm Springs revenue? It says Agua Caliente Casino Palm Springs annual revenue is $73 million. Zippia's data science team found the following key financial metrics about Agua Caliente Casino Palm Springs after extensive research and analysis. Agua Caliente Casino Palm Springs has 1,000 employees, and the revenue per employee ratio is 73,000. Agua Caliente Casino Palm Springs peak revenue was $73 million in 2023. All right. Okay. And this is the website to the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians. As you can see, this is the current tribal council that is, I think, yeah, this is the current tribal council here. All right, these members. It's very interesting, you know, how our Native American brothers and sisters, unlike our ancestors who did have a Freedmen's Bureau, but, you know, our Native American brothers and sisters were able to, at least in some form, some way, continue with their land, you know, and getting other benefits while American freedmen have been locked out. All right, so I did want to share that information with you, family. So once again, you can check out the city committee hearing on our platform here. And you just look at the title, Section 14, Housing Reparations, Palm Springs. If I can remember, I'll try to put it, excuse me, in the description of the video as well as some of these articles. All right, so that's about it. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel and to this program. And please stay safe and informed. And as always, really appreciate you. And on that note, that's about it. Everybody have a wonderful day, and we are out. Peace and reparations.
I think that the Black Americans have been the only real diehard Americans here, because we're the only ones who carried the process through the process. That everyone else has to sort of like skip stages. We're the ones who marched, we're the ones who carried the Bible, we're the ones who carried the flag, we're the ones who tried to go through the courts. And being born American didn't seem to matter. Because we were born Americans, but we still had to fight for what we were looking for. And we still had to go through those channels and those processes.
I don't really care what you have to say. Facts over fiction is the motto replay. Muhammad Ali came up from the clay. Grassroots built up this USA. Now knowing your history, you'll get played. Equip yourself cause we came to slay any opponent that's up in our way. Look at Malcolm X and his deliberate.
The way it currently stands, forced labor, slavery takes precedence over rehabilitation and public safety.
Oh, by the way, while the Biden administration gives reparations to everyone but freed people, look at the billions he has run over to Ukraine.
We don't have black grocery stores because if you think about it now, just to get in that supply chain, it's almost unheard of.
They don't want the truth to get out. Okay? I don't want to know what my family did or what all these people did and all this stuff like that. Okay? You read that 500-page report.
There's this thing called white superiority and black inferiority. That mindset allows all of the behaviors that we've seen across generations, allows for the construction of these policies and practices and systems and structures that continue to oppress us. This is not a handout. This is a debt that is owed.
You know, Allensworth was like the internet of his time in 1904, 1905.
The total black population in California is about 2.6 million, and then of that, the descendants compose about 2.2 million of that. So California, with a multi-billion-dollar surplus, can absolutely afford to satisfy the international terms for reparations, beginning with compensation.
Any financial obstacle that exists that impedes the success of increasing financial prosperity needs to be dealt with and eliminated.
No matter where we've been, no matter what part of this fight we've been in, we've been harmed, and we've had harm done to us specifically.
When I got to Los Angeles, this was some of the worst segregation I'd ever seen. And remember, I'm telling you, I'm from Mississippi.
Because as you can see, I'm giving you broken history right now, you know? But I had to give it to you guys today. I said, no, I got to show them this because it's so precious and nobody really knows about it.
Black people don't have that kind of luxury. Our historically black communities have been redistricted multiple times.
Now listen, if you can't handle the TR roof, don't tune in.